Well, we are 1 week removed from Bounce House Weekend. Where is UCF in terms of all the top 2025 prospects? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the game are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on the game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. Special guest, obviously, Nick is not on this week. Steven Leonard, 24/7 Sports. You know, Steven, I've been doing it for 2 years, doing this pod, and more people have asked for you on in comment section, on Twitter, than any other UCF guest. So I'm happy that we can finally make this work and get you on. So thank you for wanting to come on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I met you this spring with you covering the team now more on the boots on the ground level. So I'm glad that we were able to meet, and I'm here now.
No, I'm excited to have you on, excited to get you on a camera. Usually on Space Nights, you're behind a mic, but excited to get you on a camera. And listen, it was a big weekend last week. I mean, again, I said on my last pod that Bounce House Weekend has been, since Gus has gotten here, the biggest recruiting weekend for UCF. It's the most crucial, and I can't think of another year. I mean, every year it's gotten bigger. The recruiting classes have been, again, history-breaking every single year, right? This year, kind of, is it just me? I want your take. Is it just me, or does it feel like there's been a slight step up? I mean, we've had 5 stars kind of go to campus the last couple years, but it felt like, oh, it's just a free visit. This one, it kind of felt a little bit bigger. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I do agree. Also, I think we've had 5 stars visit UCF, but it hasn't been all together. It's been kind of just like one here or there. This week, obviously, it was 3 in one weekend. That's a major step up from what UCF recruiting was on like before Gus, and even since Gus has been here. Like you said, it's kind of taken that step up each year. I think they broke the record his first year, broke the record his second year and third year, and now they're on pace to break it again.
Yeah, they are on pace. According to 24/7 Sports, they are 24th in the top 25 with recruiting in the 2025 class. I mentioned it last week. I think the word family in college football is used so much. I hate the word family because every single recruit uses it with every single team. Oh, this feels like family. But with UCF, it almost feels like whenever a recruit is talking to you or talking to other reporters, the word actually matters. It means something. So kind of give your take when you're talking to these recruits, and we'll go into them. When you're talking to them, do you get that kind of vibe that this is a family atmosphere that I might say, oh, this school's like a family, that school's like a family, but UCF really embodies the family mentality in Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go into just one example. Kendarius Reddick, obviously he has a son. And I asked him about how did your son feel on the visit? And he said they treated his son just like he was part of the family. And they've helped him become a better father, he feels. And it's just one big family for him at UCF. He kind of got teary-eyed a little bit talking about Trevon and Addison and Alex Mathis. So it feels more real, like when players are talking about specific coaches at UCF versus other programs that I've seen.
No, it's been awesome. And I think that translates into the commits that UCF is getting and the level of commits or recruits that are coming onto campus and really buying into the program. Because especially, listen, after a 6 and 7 year, nobody's maybe looking at UCF and saying, oh, they're going to a college football playoff next year. But the look by these recruits is we see the vision. We see what's going on at UCF, which is basically making these players way more inclined, especially the last couple of years, to say, we're going to commit early. And again, with UCF, you don't see a lot of these guys commit and then decommit. If you really think the last couple of years, Steven, and I mean, you could think of maybe a couple off the top of your head, UCF has kept a majority. Once a guy's committed, it's usually they're staying committed.
Yeah, I think their average decommit since Gus has been here is 2 a class, and the average for the country is around 5 to 6.
Yeah.
So they are pretty good at containing their class.
No, so that's why, I mean, we're going to get into it, and I want to implore everybody, I'll say it at the end of the show, but if you want, all the latest UCF news, all of the inside scoop, follow Steven and go pay for a membership at 24/7 Sports on the UCF site. He does a great job. You get a lot more information you'll get here, but luckily you'll get a lot of information on the players that were there and a little couple nuggets on this show. So go follow him there, but let's get into it. We'll start with the offensive line, which I know nobody usually starts with when it comes to fun things to talk about when it comes to recruiting. But UCF got a commitment in Gavin Blanchard. At the time of this recording, we're recording this on Wednesday, June 5th. So you did put a crystal ball in for Chasten Brown, who would be the highest ranked offensive lineman in UCF history. So we'll talk about him in a second. But, for Gavin to literally commit, again, right after Bounce House Weekend, you usually get 1 or 2 after Bounce House Weekend. It always happens. 1 or 2 guys commit instantly. He canceled all of his visits, had some big visits lined up. Talk about him, and when you talk to him, it was a good interview, but, talk about his excitement for joining Herb Hand and the Knights.
Obviously, I actually got to witness his commitment. He was inside and got to tell the staff. I think I posted it on my YouTube. I'm not sure if it's public or unlisted, but we were interviewing the Desir twins, and a big eruption came, and he talked about it in the interview where he was just so elated, and the staff was so just welcoming and out there for him, and he just felt on top of the world and like he made the right choice. He's someone that I think even like 24/7 Sports underrates as a prospect, because it's hard to rate a guard very highly based on the parameters of what 24/7 is looking at. They're looking at NFL potential, and guards, I mean, it's a hard business to look at.
Yeah.
But he's someone that he was the top pick for Georgia Tech on the offensive line. Like he's a top player in that position. He transferred over to Wiregrass. That wasn't actually put on our website until this weekend when I found out, but I'm going to be watching him this year. I think he's an exciting player. He's a mauler on the inside. He can play outside too. They want him at left guard, which is a position that UCF obviously is going to be losing Medley in the offseason. So there's going to be some opening next year. He's an exciting player.
No, for sure. And we'll get into the offensive line. Obviously, Chasten Brown, when you put a crystal ball in or somebody else puts a crystal ball in, the likelihood that happens is pretty high. So when Brown commits, we'll talk about it here, but I mean, is he 6'7" or is he bigger? Like, he looks huge.
So he reported himself as 6'9", okay. 260 pounds, which he's listed at 6'7", 240, but that was, I think, last fall, like really early in the fall last year.
So he might have hit a little bit of a growth spurt.
Yeah, he's a basketball guy. It was his first season of football last year, and I think he was all Georgia in his first year of football. So it's like he's really good at football. He's naturally talented, but he is still growing into his body.
Yeah, that's insane. Imagine a 6'9", 6'10" left tackle. That'd be insane. But again, when he commits, we'll talk about it, but again, would be the highest ranked offensive lineman in UCF history. We're going to assume when I talk about the offensive line that he is in there. It seems, Steven, like UCF is going hardcore after offensive linemen. Last year, you get Walt Claire Flynn. You assume he's going to play center for the Knights when he gets playing time, which could be this year, could be next year. It's going to be sooner rather than later. You get Jacquez Joyner, interior offensive lineman, probably playing right guard or center potentially. Gavin Blanchard, left guard. He said he could play a little bit of a center. He snaps balls. Again, it's good to be able to play all those positions. Chasten Brown, obviously offensive tackle. And then you're also going after guys like Max Buchanan and Andrew Stragle. So UCF, this is, last year was a heavy defense, right? The year before was heavy offense. This just seems heavy offensive line. Basically, let's get an entire 5 offensive linemen and develop them. So hopefully by year 2, year 3, especially with a lot of older guys on the line this year, you're going to have potentially 5 starters. Do you see kind of that happening? Because it's very interesting to see this year.
Yeah, I mean, I see a realistic world where UCF ends up taking 6 offensive linemen in this class. I think they've taken 2 max under Gus so far, so it's definitely a shift. Obviously, they've seen in the portal it's hard to consistently go out there and land top players, so you have to develop your own on the offensive line. It's a position where you're going to have to grab a bunch of high schoolers, develop them up. Herb Hand's a really good coach. A lot of recruits believe in his vision. I know Demetrius Campbell, his dad, was talking about how much he loved this staff. His family has seen like a lot of official visits. Obviously, his brother used to play at Notre Dame. Now he's at Howard for basketball, and it was completely blowing them away as far as an official visit. And I mean, if you can blow someone away that's been on like 20 something visits, you're doing something right.
Yeah, UCF knows how to put on an OV. Like that's we've known that for the past 3 years, because everybody that leaves UCF is like, that was one of my best or my best visit by far. Again, the scavenger hunt is a huge hit. I guess people love riding around in those go-kart or the golf carts and running into signs. That's fun. That's fun. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will. There's a video. Go to Stephen Leonard. He reposted it, but LaDarian Clardy's brother posted a video, but that was fun. But no, UCF knows how to put on an OV. And again, if UCF can nab, they see in the Big 12, you need, again, Power 4 football, you need a good offensive line. You need depth. And I think Gus and the staff have seen that maybe the depth is lacking or has lacked last year, maybe this year, and we need to go get a lot of young guys, develop them, and make a good offensive line roster to make sure we're set up for the future. Let's move on to one guy that has been committed to UCF for a while, but I said was one of my top high importance players of the weekend, Tavion Swint. Obviously, sought after by a lot of schools in the state, one of the top running backs on the board. Schools have been trying to get him flipped for ever since he committed to UCF. I said this weekend was as important as the last year having him committed, because, again, if you're looking in terms of a running back of the future, he is it. And it seems like, Steven, from what you've been reporting, that UCF did just that. So talk about Swint and how this weekend went for him.
Again, just another big visit for him. I think he's the longest commit in UCF history, committing the spring game of his sophomore year. He's one that's been around for a while. He told me he didn't go to the bounce last weekend after his freshman year. He went to the one after his sophomore year. He's someone that is a cornerstone for UCF, and they knew that. Cam Martin knew that going into this weekend. He needed to assure that commitment, and it seems like he did. Swint told me and other reporters that he planned to cool his recruitment down. He had a visit tentatively with Ole Miss planned, and that's not going to be taken. He may reopen that in the fall, he said. There was some options there, but he would be shutting it down for the summer.
Well, that's good to hear. And again, players take visits. It's not about, where they take the visit. It's if they stay committed, if they are, commitments these type of days are, so flimsy. But with Swint, you kind of assume that hopefully by the fall he's going to be signed to the Knights. Yeah. Now let's get in.
Go something ahead. About him as well. Like when we were interviewing Gavin Blanchard, he came up and dapped him up. He was really loving on Gavin post commitment. I think he's really excited about the offensive line group coming in, just as any running back would be.
Yeah, I would be too, with potentially 6, 7 offensive linemen going to get signed in one class. I'm sure he's loving life with what UCF is doing. But let's get into some of the uncommitted, not committed to UCF guys. We'll go through these, but I think the top one that everybody kind of caught my eye, was defensive lineman Malik Autry, committed to Auburn, 5-star. Again, when I said before, you never felt like in years past UCF had a chance at a 5-star. It was always they take a visit. Maybe if they leave their school in a year or two, UCF will be a viable option. Am I getting the wrong sentiment that Autry is definitely, the Knights feel like they're in this one? Like Malik Autry feels like he is there for the taking. He's not Auburn's 100%. He's looking at his options.
I mean, it definitely feels like UCF is in the mix for him, which I don't think we've ever been able to say with any 5-star, like you said. Autry's a kid that he's very much said that he loves Gus Malzahn. He grew up a Gus Malzahn fan. Obviously, being in that Auburn area helps. The family's also very close with Brian Blackman. He used to be the head coach at Autry's high school. So there's a lot of connection to the UCF staff. And I think, again, it's more of like he feels like family at UCF. Obviously, it's going to be hard to pull him out of Alabama. He's from right down the road from Auburn at Opelika. Sorry if I got that wrong.
One of the two.
But he's from right down the road, so it's going to be hard to pull him out. But UCF definitely has a fighter's chance. I wouldn't count them out.
No, and it's going to be an exciting couple of months. Obviously, a highly touted prospect. A lot of schools are going to be going after him. He's taking the visits. He's going out. But again, UCF just being in contention, regardless if they get him or not. Again, you said fighter's chance. I'm sure UCF feels pretty good after this weekend. Them just being in contention is huge because that opens it up for years coming up where 5-stars don't feel like, oh, it's a step down taking a visit to UCF. No, like it's being viewed as I'm going on an OV to UCF. I get to go to Universal. And on top of that, I might go here. So that's huge. And we'll see in the coming months what happens with Autry. But let's talk about some wide receivers because it seems like UCF's going after basically most of the top 4-star receivers. This past weekend, it was highlighted by Javon Boggs and Carl Jenkins. Boggs obviously was an Ohio State commit, decommitted, released a top 4 of Mizzou, UCF, USC, and Georgia. He's not going on his USC visit anymore. He announced that a couple days ago. And then Carl Jenkins, he's got, a top 4 of like UCF, USF, Illinois, and a couple others. But who do you feel confident in? I think both. Boggs seemingly this past weekend was tweeting, with a QB prospect that we'll talk about in a second. Boggs has seemed very UCF leaning for the past couple weeks, and even Jenkins, even though I feel more confident in Boggs. Kind of what's your take on those two guys and the wide receiver prospects that UCF is going after as a whole?
I feel like there's a lot of confidence in both of those guys ending up at UCF. Carl Jenkins, obviously, he's from St. Augustine. He was the first wide receiver to talk to Tim Harris post his coming back to UCF. And that's really been something big for him. He's kind of always loved on that. He even had me take a picture for his profiles wearing the Knights gears. So he's someone that I've monitored for a little while. I've talked to him. I have a pretty good relationship with him. He's someone that I could see at UCF in more of a Kobe Hudson type role. Whereas Boggs, he even said himself that UCF staff has compared him to Javon Baker. And I see a lot of that in him. He was Mr. Football for Florida, so best player in Florida according to people. So he's pretty good at football, I would say, and he has a lot of UCF connections. Cedric Hawkins is from Cocoa. You talked about Jacques Joyner. He's a 2025 aligned commit at Cocoa. And then their head coach is Ryan Schneider, one of UCF's best quarterbacks. So there's a lot of connections here. It's home school. The tweet was kind of interesting. Chris Boyle asked a good question about it, and he gave a pretty like hinty answer. And then as well as that, he also was one of the few guys to like hang around for a while after his visit. I think all of the media members packed up and left, and he was still there. So there's some good signs for UCF. Obviously, Missouri is still out there. Georgia's still out there, but
No, listen, he's my number one guy on the board. If you go watch tape on this guy, especially at Cocoa, I mean, he's incredible. And I've been tweeting about him since when he was an Ohio State commitment. I said, watch out for him. I mean, if UCF can just get in the race here, being a hometown hero, it was such a moniker like, oh, okay, it's a hometown hero. It's like, is this shtick going to work? But it's not really a shtick. It's like these kids actually believe in it and want to play for their hometown team. It does feel like every year there's like one school in Central Florida that kind of we get like 3 or 4 players from that same school. Cocoa feels like that the last even couple years. It's like Cocoa's really just a program that's building up, and it's almost like a farm system for UCF. So listen, those two guys, again, never hate on getting wide receivers, especially young ones. And these two guys, I know there's a couple coming up on visits that would be big time too. So listen, I'm all for loading up on wide receivers and Boggs especially, but getting Jenkins as well. Those would be 2 big-time commitments. But let's talk probably the thing that everybody wants to talk about, everybody wants to hear about, because it's the most important position on any football team, pro, college, peewee, whatever you got, quarterback. Now, the quarterback situation for the Knights has been very interesting. Obviously, in 2026, there's a lot of big-time names that are in the local area that you assume UCF was going after. In 2025, obviously, it was going to be E.J. Colson. That was going to be the 2025 quarterback. So maybe I'm naive, I was thinking UCF's not going to sign a quarterback in 2025. They already got one. They got technically 2 last year. They'll probably get one in 26. That's the big-time QB class. Well, they had 2 2025 quarterbacks come into the building that are big-time top 20 QBs. Kamario Taylor, he's committed to Mississippi State. He took a visit. But the one that you can't, and listen, it's there's a chance he decommits and, is considering UCF. But, being in an offense with Jeff Lebby seems very exciting, just like it's exciting to go with Gus. But Malik Washington, it just seems, Steven, like, again, he's from Maryland. Maryland has an offer. He's right down the road from Maryland. You assume, okay, he's going to go to the Big Ten. He's going to go stay at home. Again, maybe it's just the latest visit and all the hype from the visit. It seems like the 6'4" quarterback is really strongly considering the Knights tweeting at Javon. So give your kind of take on those two specifically. What'd you see? I know you talked to them. Kind of let us know a little bit from that. And is there a chance that UCF can land one of their top QB prospects ever?
Yeah, I think Boggs and Washington had played together at some point in camp. So there was a bit of a connection there, and obviously that connection grew. I posted the video of him talking about the wide receiver he felt most had the biggest relationship with.
Yeah,
it was Boggs, and they've been tweeted back and forth at each other since Caden Pining's been tweeting at both of them, the UCF tight end commit. Yep. So there's a lot of social media buzz about him. Just real quick on Kamario Taylor, I don't think he's gonna decommit. I think he's pretty locked in with Mississippi State.
Yeah,
he has that whole hometown hero vibe there. But Malik Washington is someone that I think Gus could pull down from Maryland. He got compared to Cam Newton. Gus was showing him clips of Cam, and he was very impressed by those clips of Cam, and he was like, dang, I want to do something like that. And then Gus would show a play of him doing that exact same thing, and it was just kind of an eye-opening experience for him. And he's someone that like you said, he would be UCF's top quarterback prospect of all time. It's currently EJ Colson, who
Yep.
is a high 3-star. So first 4-star quarterback as well in program history. It would mean a lot to UCF to land him, and I think he feels like a priority because of that.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to the UCF staff for getting the exact clips that Cam did and Malik did to kind of entice that visit a little bit more. But again, I think I talk about it, Steven. This year, obviously, you have KJ. That's exciting. Next year, it's a wide open race. We have no idea who's going to step up. Obviously, the thought was the staff really likes EJ. I know the staff really does like EJ, and he has any better chance to start than all the rest of them. But you still have to recruit quarterbacks. You have to see if, again, and a guy like this who fits the Gus mold, it seems like all Gus has to do is just find a 6'4" tall quarterback that can run and say, hey, I coached Cam Newton. And it's like, ooh, he coached Cam Newton. So it's exciting because, again, this was a guy that wasn't on my radar. I just assumed Maryland kid, he's going to Maryland. We'll go for a 2026 guy. We have a bunch of them in the area. Guy from Cocoa. Obviously, Luke Grubbs is going to Notre Dame, but there's a lot of guys in the area. But if Gus and staff can land this guy, again, people were wondering, would UCF stay in the top 25? I think it's probably safe to say after this weekend, we don't know who's going to commit or when they're going to commit. It's safe to say UCF maybe is pushing maybe top 20, like with some of the guys they're bringing in. Do you have any final thoughts on the quarterbacks before we move on to safeties?
I would say he has a commit. Malik Washington does have a commitment date set up for the end of this month. He does have the Maryland visit. He's visited Virginia Tech in the past, so it's not just a UCF like assurance, but he does have a commitment date set up, and he hadn't fully announced it until the UCF visit, but it had been in the works for a little bit.
No, and we want to make it clear, all these guys that we're talking about have other visits for the most part. And unless you hear otherwise, they're probably taking those visits. Most of these recruits, again, if you're just a casual fan that doesn't know much about recruiting, these recruits take visits the entire month of June. And then after that, they usually make a decision from July all the way up until October. So we're not going to get a swarm of commitments. I know a couple of them will be in July. Boggs is in July. Washington seems to be close to July. So you'll hear about some of these guys, but you might not hear from these guys for a little bit. Let's talk about one final group that I felt inclined to talk about was safety. It seems like, again, not just this year, but in years past, UCF has gone hardcore after corners, safeties, just defensive backs in general. Now it helps when you bring in a guy like Reed, and obviously UCF has a bunch of secondary coaches that are really good recruiters, right? You had Jonte Gilbert on a visit, big-time safety, and then Ladarian Clardy, who's an Ole Miss commit, or crystal ball, not an Ole Miss commit, but a crystal ball. So, again, take it. Usually crystal balls are a good indication, obviously, of where a player's going. Gilbert tell me if I got this right. Gilbert was crystal balled to Clemson in December, but he just released his top schools with Clemson not on it. So clearly something happened at Clemson where that's not happening. So he's more so an open guy. So kind of talk about the safeties. Obviously, UCF has Tony Williams. They've already have 2 safeties in the class kind of committed. What's your take on UCF going after so many DBs, and where do they see them fitting in? Are they playing safety? Do you think they'll play corner? What's your kind of take on all these guys?
Yeah, see, the thing with UCF obviously is their DBs are all kind of versatile. Like that's where they like them. They like them to be able to be cross-trained. They can play corner. They can play safety. They can play nickel. I think DeMarcus Gardner, who's currently committed to UCF, he's more of a like outright corner. He's a speedster on the outside, so that's more of a specific position. But Jonte Gilbert could play a multitude of positions. So could Tony Williams. And just talking about the Ladarian Clardy, I think that was from March, the Ole Miss crystal ball. it's since seemed more like UCF, FSU, Miami have kind of picked up steam on his recruitment. Um, and yeah, they like those two the most. I think those two are going to be the DBs really to watch that are not committed to UCF so far um, throughout the fall. I didn't get a chance to talk to either one of them. I'm supposed to talk to them this week. Um, it's kind of just been playing phone tag with them, but uh, I'll start with Gilbert. He's from Atlanta, obviously a UCF hotbed for recruiting.
Literally.
Um, he was committed to Ohio State. Another thing that UCF just apparently loves to do now is recruit Ohio State. Um, and he's someone that has a big connection to Addison Williams, obviously through the being from Atlanta, and he's someone that they love at corner. They also love him at safety. So I definitely could see UCF getting his commitment. I think he's planning it for the fall right now, but commitment dates can change. We've seen people move commitment dates from October to June. It just kind of depends on the kid's situation. He had a recent offer from Michigan, and they did make it to his top seven. So that's probably the other school to watch. And then for Clardy, like I said, FSU, I think he's taking a visit there this week. He has a visit scheduled for Miami, and he plans on a summer commitment. So that's one to definitely watch. I know Addison and Trevon Reed are big on him.
Again, two big time 4-stars, two big time guys. UCF has two of the best recruiters in the country at that position. So it'll be exciting to see who can commit, where they commit. And again, I want to also emphasize, even if they don't commit here. And again, I also want to emphasize, stars don't matter. I've said this before, like, yes, the stars now, it's fun. It's fun to look at. Like, it just shows their potential. But some of the best UCF players in history have been 3-stars, and 2-stars. So I want to make that clear. This is just off of their ranking right now because it's fun to look at and fun to see the type of players that they could be. But let's talk about the next couple weeks, Steven. I obviously have a couple names written down. The one that got announced a couple days ago for 2026, Lamar Brown would be, again, to get him on campus, number one interior offensive lineman in the country for next year, massive. You have a couple wide receivers coming up, a big-time edge FSU commit. So kind of give a couple names that are visiting in the next couple weeks that UCF fans should keep an eye out for.
I think I'll just focus on like this upcoming week. Obviously, you mentioned the 2026 unofficial for Lamar Brown. He's the number 4 player in the country. You said number 1 offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in the country. He's also a defensive tackle prospect. Can play on the edge. He's kind of just an athlete. Don't really know where he'll play at the next level. He's a do-it-all kind of guy. I've never seen a Travis Hunter on the offensive line, defensive line. But
I was just about to say that. That's hilarious.
I could see him being that type of player. He's that talented. He just turned 15 the other day, and there's clips of him ragdolling other guys. He's a physical specimen. But this weekend you got Waltez Clark, 4-star committed to Florida. He's a running back. UCF also wants him as a wide receiver, though. Bit of a Xavier Townsend type Ryan O'Keefe role where he's able to play both positions. You also have Tyler Williams, another wide receiver, recently transferred to Armwood High School. Was at Sumner with a visitor from last weekend, Cam White. Same thing. He also transferred to Armwood. So. UCF obviously has a little bit of a tradition with Armwood. They got Kason Stokes there last year. And then the third guy is Michael Riles. He's an edge from Texas. He goes to the same high school that Cam Martin, the running backs coach, went to. And yeah, it's kind of weird because he's the primary recruiter and he's a running backs coach.
Yeah.
Recruiting an edge, but he's someone that I've had my eyes on for a little bit. He came a couple of times during the spring, once for a visit, and then again for the spring game. And UCF has been in it for him with like Oklahoma State. He's like one of the top guys that they want at that edge position.
Well, listen, a lot of names, a lot of good things coming up. Steven, thank you. You gave a lot of information. I'm sure fans are loving it. But where can they find even more information, check you out, and help you out with all your content?
Obviously, my Twitter or X username is sleonard247, and then you would be able to find all of that information at knights247.com. It's actually 60% off for annual membership right now. It was last weekend, and it was supposed to just be for last weekend, but we had such a big growth that we've decided to add it for this weekend alongside the normal 24/7 sports promotion for all the other sites. We're just going to run with them as well.
Awesome. Go check it out. Go pay for a membership. Again, a lot of great information. If you're a die-hard Knights fan and want all of the latest information with recruiting, all that good stuff, go check that out. Steven, let's do this again. This will not be the only time you're on. I appreciate you taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, man.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Charge On. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. As always, we will be back next week. Everybody, this has been Charge On presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.